Welcome back, Michelle.
Hey Dan, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just loving. Look at this gift bag right here. Wow. What tell us what is this here today for all of our watchers, viewers, listeners?
So guys, we talk about like a lot of health related type of products, and I want to have us give one away to you. And
What?
it's important, in honor of our, having our 100th episode happen a little bit ago. And I mean, just the fact that we've graduated, I can't believe we're doing video.
We are
I can't believe
2025.
how consistent like we are. So I want
That's a
to,
huge learning curve. It
yeah,
still is. It took us a while to set it up today.
seems every
It's
time, I don't know.
yeah.
But so I thought like let me see what type of product might be really helpful for our listeners. And this is not a paid ad, although if we'd like to have them
If
sponsor
someone
it,
wants
but
to pay us for this,
it's something that I have and I got another one. And it's a TENS unit. So TENS units used to be available only through prescription, and now people have them all the time. You can get them at the store. This particular TENS unit has pads that go on that can stick right to your skin, but they also have a pair of shoes, and it also has a little belt. So like let's say you have low back pain or you have like calf type of muscle pain from running, you
Mhm.
can put it just on that device. And it's a cute little
You know
type
what it
of
looks like?
device.
It looks like a actually it looks like a Microsoft Zune for any of you
Yeah.
guys who remember that. That was like their conversion of an iPod. Um,
There's multiple different,
so the device that's the thing that sends
this
the
is the
little
device.
electrical
Yep.
things.
You charge it with a wall charger and it has a lithium battery, so you're not wasting a ton of batteries. You can add extra pads, so you can do two parts of your body at the same time. But
Look, it goes right a little here. Look.
it's a device that I have found to be really helpful when I pull a muscle, and I
So do
have
you
one for
feel it?
you.
Do you feel it?
Yes.
So it's kind of giving you like little mini electrical impulses.
There's a couple different programs that you can do. So if you want
Uh-huh.
like short bursts, or if you want really like like kneading sort of
Yeah.
mentality, so you can do that. And there's different ways that
Okay.
you can use it.
I went to a physical therapist once and they hooked me up to this thing. Girl, it felt amazing. I don't
Yeah,
know what it was.
it does feel good.
Yeah, but it
So
felt
for
amazing.
my back, this feels a lot like if you were gonna go get a pedicure and you were gonna sit in one of the fancy chairs, and this is something that you can do at home. The sessions are 20, 30, or 60 minutes, and obviously you can do it shorter. It's not unhealthy to do it for longer. I would just say you probably won't feel the best benefits from doing it longer time. But I liked it because being on a schedule, you could turn it on a mode for like 20 minutes and you could sleep, and then it would be off. You wouldn't have to just be on it all night long.
So like the slipper version, it has these little electrical like contact points on your feet.
That's what it hooks to this device. And
Oh,
so then there's a pattern.
interesting. Look at that.
But there's reflexology ideas on
Uh-huh.
what parts that you might
Is
want to
that
stimulate
real
of
or
your
is that
foot.
kind of like made up
No, it's real.
reflexology?
It's
Really?
real. Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
So just like, in your brain, you learned about that homunculus for the sensory portions.
Uh-huh.
There's portions of your feet that are going to be innervated by different muscles. And
Well, we gotta try this
the
out. I want to
fascia
try
that
this
goes
out.
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan's,
We're
Dan's
gonna
going to try out your giveaway one.
yeah, well we're gonna electrocute the feet and see what happens.
So at home, my kids say, just don't put it on higher than a 2 because
Like
then it feels too strong. I go up to 5 or 6.
you're like, "Ah."
So I think it goes up to 8.
Oh wow.
But
This
anyway,
looks like it'd be very massaging.
so what do you have to do to get this?
Oh yes. Tell
What
our listeners, watchers.
what you need to do is you need to go onto YouTube. You need to hit the subscribe button. You need to leave us a comment on YouTube. And if you are able to, you go onto your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Pandora,
Apple Podcasts.
iHeartRadio,
Most of
Apple.
you listen to us on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, but go on there and also hit like a comment on there. So if you've commented before, do it again. That's
Commented multiple times.
Well, that's how we're going to know for this particular giveaway. So We're going to be giving this away at the event that's in person on August 23rd.
So they have to comment and come to the event?
Well, we're going to be announcing the winner.
Okay.
So if you can't come to the event, we'd love you to come to the event. But if you can't come to the event, you'll have to get it from me at the office in Pinellas Park. If you're coming to the event, it's August 23rd. It's at the Hyatt Clearwater Beach. It's that big pink hotel in Clearwater Beach. And the more specifics will be on the Sleep Tampa Bay, and we will be also putting stuff out on the Sleep Takeout podcast and on LinkedIn so that you can come see us. And we're going to do a physical activity walk, clean up Clearwater Beach, and learn a little bit about sleep and winding down.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because you also get those tired but not sleepy bags we talked about last time too.
So if you don't happen to win this, you get the tired but not sleepy bags also for hitting the subscribe, leaving a comment, YouTube and Buzzsprout or whatever favorite app that you listen to on the podcast.
Thank you to our Buzzsprout Plus subscribers, which are our Sleep Takeout Plus subscribers.
We love all of you, but we particularly love it if you want to share it with other people so that we can increase our viewership.
Who doesn't want to get a bag like this?
In the office, I talk a lot about how the podcast is really not meant for our actual current patients or clients.
Right.
It's meant for the people that are out, that don't necessarily want to see a doctor over this. They don't think it's as significant as they need to be referred for a specialist. We love you if you already are seeing us as well. But the stuff that I hope that you're learning through the podcast is very actionable and not scary medical.
No. Yeah, this is all like low-hanging fruit types of stuff. Like we're kind of like a glorified like self-help workbook, but with more fun personality.
We're just taking it out to the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. We gave you tips last time about how to get some plant-based eating at your local grocery store.
Now we're going to help recover some of those muscles if you're exercising or if tension or stress is bothering your sleep.
Right. Absolutely.
So
all different strategies.
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about going back to the brain and about how to get your brain to turn off those thoughts.
Oh, absolutely. I would say, Michelle, this is why we're going to have not yet, but we are going to have the ultimate guide to anxiety. It's coming out soon because even though this is a core idea for CBT-I, it's definitely a core idea that, and a lot of reasons, deserves its own ultimate guide to anxiety, because almost every client that I've worked with that has insomnia usually also has some anxiety. And maybe it's helpful too that we kind of define that word, because I find that a lot of times when I talk with new clients about anxiety, they're like, oh, well, I don't have that. And
everybody seems to think that anxiety is a panic disorder.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not. Like, and I would say too, anxiety can be felt and experienced in different ways too. I think a more helpful word for it is just to think about it as kind of like energy. Like sometimes you got the energy in your mind, like it's kind of that being aware of things. It might be kind of ruminating on things. Sometimes you have the energy in your body, which is where maybe you just don't feel as calm and relaxed as you want. You could be kind of antsy, but you also could just be alert. Like that also can kind of be, anxiety. And then sometimes it can be more of a mood-based type of thing, which is a lot of like cyclical worrying types of things where you're just like, whoa, like I'm always like unsure, like when the hammer's going to drop or something along those lines. And technically that's also cognitive, but it doesn't matter. Like what matters is how you experience it, and what you do with it is what we're going to kind of talk about today from a sleep perspective. Because this is really one of the meat and potatoes kind of idea behind CBT-I. I would also say too, we should probably do a whole other series of podcasts just on anxiety from a treatment perspective.
I'm sure they exist.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. That's what we're definitely going to deep dive into, the ultimate guide to anxiety. But one of the things that I also want to kind of circle back to from our CBT-I session 3 talk was around medications. And you know how we talked about a few episodes back about stimulus control and about, which is really just kind of conditioning, and how you can learn to associate your bed and your bedroom with being alert or awake and feeling that tension. One of the parts that can show up often too with sleep medications especially if you take the medication kind of irregularly, like you take it as needed, is
Or
it
only when you really have a problem?
right? Yes, and I see this a lot with supplements. I see a lot of this with because it's not regulated. You go through your grocery store aisle and there's like 20 of them, and all of them promise you everything. And but I see a lot of this where clients like, well, I tried this supplement, I tried that supplement. If I don't wake up or I can't fall asleep, then I do this, and I do this, and I do that. And this is where I would say you can actually learn to do some conditioning to yourself too, as it relates to taking either a supplement or a medication on an as needed kind of breakthrough kind of pattern. Because what you're really kind of teaching yourself is that the only way I can get relief is to do the thing. Officially in psychology, we have a word for this. It's called like a safety type of behavior, which is something that you do in order to avoid the thing that you're fearing. Like maybe it's bad rest or that you're going to be staring at your ceiling for the next 5 hours. And
Or it's
so,
gonna be like that other time that that thing happens.
yep, you got it. And so that's another thing that I would encourage, all of our listeners and watchers and viewers to kind of be aware of is that if I'm taking these things on an as needed basis, I might actually be reinforcing to myself, I might actually be conditioning myself to think that the only way to get relief is to do the safety behavior when the honest reality is we know it. We know you're not getting better sleep when you take the sleep supplement
Right.
or when you do the medication because if you were, you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast or working with us in general, because we know they tend to not work in the long term. So that's another kind of key piece on that. But now I want to talk about anxiety and specifically about the three different types. We can kind of think about anxiety as physiological, meaning the things that you feel in your body could be changes in your heart rate or your breathing or just some tenseness kind of in
Yeah,
your
body
muscles.
temperature,
Yep.
muscle tension,
Mm-hmm.
achiness.
Yep. All those things. Then there's also what we call like emotional hyperarousal, which this is just really when you're feeling a lot of just moods and the intensity of those moods kind of is ebbing and flowing. And then the third type of anxiety that
And
really
just remember
shows
that
up.
could be good or bad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like good experiences in life also come with stress and tension. So, great examples of these are big life transitions. I always think about this because I had this. I don't think I've told you this. I'm working through this book with my kiddo right now about getting ready for middle school, even though she's not yet ready for middle school. But we're reading this kind of book, and it's talking about the first day of middle school, um, and even that's like, an example of something like you can be super excited about something like first day on the new job, or, you're going to go on this amazing vacation, or you're going to, maybe you got a date with someone you're really into. Like that type of thing that can all alert you. All of it can kind of keep you up. Um, and then the third part is cognitive hyperarousal. And this is really when your mind gets kind of stuck in this really kind of what I would say ruminative place, which is really where your brain just maybe zipping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And then sometimes you can even get pulled into this kind of downward negative cycle. And that's really, I would say, one of the key characteristics of anxiety as it relates to insomnia is some of that downward kind of spiral negative thinking, usually around beliefs about sleep, which, it's not a surprise myself. Sometimes a lot of these clients have taken on these negative beliefs about sleep based off things they've picked up from their doctor's office, from the news, from something they've read, which says, oh my gosh, like I'm going to die young if I don't have 8 hours of sleep, or something else along those lines. When the honest reality is, it's a little bit more complicated of an answer than just that. So, what do you think about those three types?
I think that it's really helpful, and you don't have to necessarily see the distinction between some of them. So when you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
it, that you were talking about, the cognitive is physiologic, or the emotional and the cognitive. Sometimes it overlaps. So don't
Mm-hmm.
just think that it could be just one of them, and also know that one can pull the other one in pretty easily.
Oh, yeah.
But the longer that any of these have been happening for, the more likely it's multiple, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what keeps people in the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not important to know that it's all separate. Just remember that you treat them all in roughly the same way. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
hear that a lot. It comes up all the time in my household with having teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
and even with my parents and other friends. how do you find things to talk about? And when we have all these episodes, they're like, I learn something new every time. And I sit there thinking, I do feel that we do provide you some good
Oh, yeah.
information,
Random new things to learn.
but everything it defaults to coming back to the basics of
Mhm.
how we work, and also how to know yourself better,
Yeah.
and also not to expect us to say that there's this one thing that if you do this one thing that all of a sudden your sleep's going to be better.
Right.
So
It's
I
it
like that.
yeah, it's kind of like, who was that I was talking to? This actually was a different client of mine. Um, we were having this conversation of where, when you think about anxiety, because a lot of times, and we even kind of chatted briefly about this before we hit record earlier today, when you think about anxiety with regards to sleep, sleep is truly like a 24-hour a day problem. And so if you don't deal with the thing, whatever the thing is or things, during the daytime, it's likely going to show up for you at nighttime. So that thing or things could be, worrying about a family member, or it could be worrying about career or sleep, or, I mean, the sleep will definitely show up for you later. It's all of these things. It's important to acknowledge that when we're dealing with anxiety that's related to sleep, we're also going to be tapping into that other anxiety, which, ding, 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 not a huge surprise here. A lot of people that have sleep problems tend to also have anxiety difficulties. Um, so that's kind of a key thing to kind of think through when we're talking about strategies for this. But what we're thinking about when it talks about sleep and kind of worry is there's a couple different pieces. Number one, you can have what we call pre-sleep kind of cognitive arousal, which this is really doing activities right before bed. Maybe you read your work email before you turned off your phone and then like tried to fall asleep. Well, like, yeah, your brain's gonna be alert and awake if you just got an email and you have to think about how you're gonna respond to it, and then you're trying to fall asleep at like
Or you just
11:30 at night.
started a series of a show that
Right.
is, maybe it's about relationships, and one of your worries is about a
Mm-hmm.
different relationship that you have. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's a work type of relationship when the
Mm-hmm.
when the show is something else.
Yep. Ooh, good plug here. One of my favorite shows right now on TV. It's called Couples Therapy. It's on Showtime with Paramount Plus if you have that streaming. One of the best couples therapy shows I've seen in a long time, by the way.
Don't
For
watch
any
it before you go to bed.
well, yeah, I would say, oh gosh, yeah, you'll be too entertained. You'll be like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And if they're 30-minute episodes, I do like a good 30-minute episode show. And it's all real. It's not fictional. It's all real. Um, but it's a great show. So anyway, but you're right. Like if you're gonna watch a show, make it something that you've probably seen before. Now, good plug here is we don't want you to fall asleep with the TV show on the background because, again, there's too many other random noises that can kind of pop up in there. So, we do know there's that pre sleep kind of cognitive arousal. There's also the rumination. This is when you start thinking about your bad sleep before you go to bed, or you're thinking about bad sleep when you're awake in the middle of the night. That kind of negative rumination is why we practiced a few sessions back or a few episodes back the mindfulness raisin exercise. It's also why we've done other ones like Leaves on a Stream before. Um, there's a reason why we've kind of infused some mindfulness pieces in here. And to be clear, too, it's kind of fascinating when they looked at kind of CBT-I, one with mindfulness, one without mindfulness. It doesn't necessarily affect how powerful the treatment itself is, just because CBT-I at its core is a very behavior based intervention. So you got to change the behavior and you actually change a lot of the poor sleep challenges. But what the mindfulness does do is it gives you the ability to focus some of this cognitive energy, this mental energy differently. And so that's a key part of what we're going to do. And then the other one is kind of, stress about types of things. And so what's really shows up a lot of times of these kind of sleep worries are your thoughts and emotions can be, they can kind of keep you up. And when we're talking about sleep, we're going to hear a couple examples of these. It could be, my insomnia is going to seriously affect my physical health. Or if I can't sleep well tonight, then I won't be able to do what I need to do tomorrow. Maybe you got that big presentation at work, or it's your first day on the job. Or if I'm an irritable or snappy or unproductive during the day, it's always because I didn't sleep well the night before. Or when I do not sleep well, I should cancel all my planned outings. This was a big one that came up with me recently with a client of mine. Um, it's a lot of preemptively clearing your social calendar of activities because you're afraid that your bad sleep is going to make you cancel. And here's where I would say is you actually need to actually need to schedule all these things regardless.
Mhm.
Like go to the thing regardless of how you feel. And you'd be surprised at how functional you can be with this stuff. What are your thoughts on any of that, Michelle?
I think it's a really common thing that comes up
Hmm.
in offices, and
Yeah.
you know, on the physician side, I feel like we do give people actually more things to worry about,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And so if you're already having some issues with sleep and you see a sleep professional and that person maybe thinks you have like a disorder, I'm not going to use sleep apnea, which is pretty common, but let's say
Hmm.
you have these very vivid dreams and you're acting out dreams. And, I mention or casually mention that there is a disorder that can lead to a a neurologic decline and like a Parkinson's sort of
Hmm.
disease. This creates another, stress or anxiety thing that's coming up. Now, it's important for me to make sure that people know the seriousness, but it's not an important thing for that person now to be having a new thing to worry about at night.
Right. Yep.
And I bring up a very specific thing too is people will put stuff on hold, not necessarily what you said, like cancel the next day's activities, but people will say, I will start dealing with a sleep problem after I retire or
Oh, yeah.
after a vacation.
Hmm.
And we bring up a lot that the less that you have to distract you and the more that your thoughts and your beliefs about good or
Hmm.
bad sleep come into it, it actually makes things worse
Hmm.
if you don't have the distraction of the job, the kids, the
Yeah.
schedule coming up. So make sure that you acknowledge and then you work through on some of the stuff we're talking about today,
Hmm.
rather than believing that it's just this point in time and it'll be better or different at another point.
Right, absolutely. I would say a big piece with retirement is thinking that once work is done, you're going to naturally find your purpose and meaning in life and things to fill your time doing. And I can tell you, I've had a good number of clients who are like, oh my gosh, I'm really bored. And I've decided that I go to bed early because I'm so bored.
Or the
Yeah.
flip, I'm busier than I ever knew what to do with, but because I can do a lot of these things at any time, I'm not doing any of the things in
Hmm.
a structured amount, and so
Right.
they go like a runaway train.
Yep, you got it. So this is where it's really important to kind of understand where that kind of mental energy is kind of going for you. And there's three kind of categories of where these automatic kind of thoughts usually fall into place for people with sleep problems. So there can be kind of this absolute thinking. This is where you view an event in kind of an all or none or a black or white fashion. Like if I didn't get 8 hours of sleep, it must mean that I got horrible rest. A common one I see on this is my Apple Watch said I didn't get enough deep
Mhm.
sleep. And I'm like, your Apple Watch doesn't really know. I mean, it's kind of imputing some things, but regardless, that information that the watch provides you is not meaningfully going to change your
But remember,
sleep.
if you find that you're doing that, the first thing that I'll do, and probably Dan will say
Hmm.
too, is limit the amount of time that you're allowed to focus on any data that comes back to you. It's not
Right.
all bad, but also remind yourself to trust yourself, take out a piece of paper,
Yep.
and do that on a regular basis.
Absolutely. A paper sleep diary is magical. Actually, we should do a whole thing on. I know we started out the CBT-I series using the CBT-I app, but and for the sleep diary, which I would encourage you all to still use something, whether it's the app or a
2026, we're
piece of
going to
paper.
start working on our book.
Yeah, yeah, our workbook coloring book slash lots of things book.
We couldn't do it that and the video this year,
Yeah,
so
maybe
we
we
have
should
to
have paint by number in it too, so you can
watercolor.
yeah, and stickers. Oh, and a little like tentagram puzzle in the back. Where it's gonna be epic. Um, but all that to say that those are things where you want to think about where your mind is kind
He
of
was
going.
just showing you tangential
I know,
thoughts.
yes. We were doing some cognitive shuffling, which we're going to get to in just a moment. Other ones, overgeneralization, another common kind of thinking pattern. This again is you draw a conclusion that every instance is going to be like this. And then catastrophizing, which is truly just a really psychology word, but really just that just means seeing something minor as rather major, meaning that you're just like, oh my God, it's ruined because of that.
Those last two, it's important for you to realize that things like your cell phone with notifications going off
Hmm.
can lead to exactly those situations perpetuating themselves.
Hmm.
Every time a notification goes off, it's got to be, my boss, my mom, my kid, and something terrible, horrible, went wrong
Hmm.
with things.
Yep, you got it. And again, the way the anxiety works with sleep, we tend to predict that we're going to have some sleep difficulty. So that's kind of anticipatory anxiety. We also predict negative and sometimes catastrophic consequences from either bad sleep or insufficient sleep. And then number three, we can really misattribute like our poor kind of daytime performance to be due only to sleep when there can be other things that kind of happen too. And so what's really kind of important about this is kind of getting to the core of what are some of the beliefs that you kind of have. And this is where the cognitive behavioral therapy part of CBTI can be helpful is you really want to kind of hone in on what are those kind of beliefs that you're kind of really thinking about your sleep, like those anxiety. And there's a word for it. It's called some of these like these automatic thoughts. But even beneath that, you would say, a common one that I hear is, I'm going to feel horrible if I don't get 8 hours of sleep. So then you just ask yourself, well, so what would happen if that were true? So what would happen if that's true, Michelle? What if you didn't get 8 hours of sleep? What would that mean?
That would be pretty normal.
This is true because it can happen. And what would happen if that were true? What if getting less than 8 hours of sleep is pretty normal?
Then I would feel dysfunction or
Mm,
less well than I would otherwise.
yeah. And what's the implication of that? Like, what does that mean to you?
That I might not be able to do everything that I would want to do the next
Yep,
day.
you got it. And so then if because what we're doing is we're kind of drilling down a little bit some of those like the core beliefs kind of behind it. You really then want to say, okay, if that's my fear, my core fear is I'm not going to be able to do some of the things during the day that I want to do, then we got to start testing it out. We got to ideally, and anytime you're doing a good test, you want to have solid data for it for at least about a week, ideally 2 weeks.
And not based on past experiences.
Correct. Yeah, and also not based on your feelings or your thoughts about something. Like what you thought happened doesn't count. That's not actually data. Data is what did happen. Or and also what you felt about it doesn't count as factual data points either. And that's primarily because of the way your brain works is that you're primed to always remember the more negative things than you are the more positive. So we just need good hard data and ideally run a little bit of an experiment and say, you know what? Did this happen to me? This was my fear. Did this happen to me over these 2 weeks? Identify all the information you can think of that says, yep, that thing happened. And then I also want you to identify all the information that says, you know what? Maybe that didn't happen the way that I thought it did. And then you're going to kind of blend those two together to come up with a more balanced way of viewing the situation. And that's a key skill to help start reducing some of that anxiety, especially around um, a lot of the beliefs of like, if I don't get enough good sleep, I'm going to somehow develop a neurodegenerative kind of disease from that perspective. So,
And
yeah.
think about, again, I'm not a psychologist, but think about times where you've tried this in the past, where something that didn't go exactly how you wanted, and that actually ended up working out for the best,
Mhm.
and because it allowed something else to happen. So if you start remembering to practice this on a regular basis, you will see that by pre-planning and catastrophizing on one side, you are not paying attention to all the good things that can come out of it. And with sleep, this is very true. Is the more that you put these absolutes and these overgeneralized statements and
Mhm.
focusing on the negative, you're actually not noticing how much better you're getting.
Right. Bingo. Exactly. All right. Now we're going to talk about 5 key things you can try and start doing today to help you manage this kind of anxiety or worry or just energy in your mind. The first one is creating a to-do list for tomorrow. So, a key part on this is we live in this world where there's lots of tasks to kind of get done. And so taking some time at the end of your day, but not during that buffer time, before you're falling asleep, but maybe the end of the day, just sketch out a to-do list. It could be on your phone. It could be a piece of paper I do love those long notepads, the ones that stick to the fridge.
They're in our giveaway bags
They
for
are.
August.
Oh,
Make sure that on the to-do list are things that are actual, like, one-item things
mhm.
so that each counts, because it's terrible for you to say, "Well, I'm gonna paint my house," on your
Oh,
to-do
yeah.
list.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen in one day. So maybe, I'm going to purchase the paint that I'm gonna use to paint the house.
Exactly. I love thinking about to-do lists from the favorite part of that I have on a to-do list is drawing the line through it, like marking it off. So that's like build your to-do list thinking about I want to mark off as many things as I can.
Yeah.
So maybe if I picked out the paint, that's one of them, but I didn't go buy it yet, but maybe you'll go buy it another day. Or maybe like break it down into smaller tasks because ideally that to-do list, you want to see lots of lists with lines through them. You don't want to say, on my to-do list is to figure out my purpose in life. No, that's not going on your to-do list. Like, we got to break that one down in a lot
Or
smaller
like in work
details.
situations, I know I have to prepare a lecture that is from scratch. A lot of the
Hmm.
lectures that I have are building off of other things, but finishing the lecture that I have to prepare from scratch is not going to be helpful. But maybe
Right.
read an article that I have pulled, to get some more information or some insight might be a more manageable thing to put on the list. But
Yep.
that's a really good point.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. The next one is what we call scheduled worry. And this one's really important because we want to make time to, if you think about something that's already like consuming energy in your life, it's probably something that does matter to you in kind of some way. And what do we do with things that do matter to us? We try and make time for them. We try and find a spot for it. So the thing with scheduled worry, though, just like we talked about, a few moments ago about doing something for a solid 2 weeks, I want you to set aside some time to let your mind just worry about that thing, but set aside the same 30 minutes or the same 45 minutes every day. And that is your scheduled worry time. You cannot do other things during that time. You cannot watch TV. You cannot, call a friend. That is your scheduled worry time. And you've got to write down what the worrisome things are for you and establish that kind of worry period for yourself. And when you catch yourself worrying, say, you know what? Nope. I'm going to do that tonight from 8 to 8:30 or 8 to 8:45. That is my scheduled worry time. Not right now. Not in the middle of the night. I'm going to put that for my next kind of scheduled worry time in front of you. All right, so that's scheduled worry. The other one here is pre-sleep worry, or sorry, pre-sleep writing. And this is when you essentially you just write out. It's kind of like journaling for about 20 minutes before bedtime or in the early evening about your thoughts, your concerns, or things in your mind.
I tell people 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's up to you.
I
Yeah.
say keep it something that you can do very routinely, whether or not you're traveling or whether or not you have other
Mhm.
things that you have to do.
Yep.
I feel like, again, maybe a 20-minute may feel overwhelming at the beginning. If it's something that you find that you like, absolutely give yourself more opportunity. I would love for people to do journal writing
Oh, yeah.
instead of the TV show.
Oh, totally. Right. Absolutely. Like, in fact, I would say each of these activities do require structured time. That is not, you have to think about it. You can't just go instantly from like watching your favorite show to brushing your teeth and going to bed. Like, you have to kind of make some time for these things. So, the same is true for the next one, which is constructive worry, which essentially is similar to the other ones, but essentially making some time where you can problem solve and figure some things out. So in the early evening, you're just going to record 2 or 3 problems or worries that you think present the greatest likelihood of keeping you awake in the middle of the night. You just label it problem number 1, problem number 2, problem number 3. And then you're going to start creating a plan for each one of those problems. So what is my plan for problem number 1 when it shows up tonight? What is my plan for problem number 2 or problem number 3? And then place that worksheet with your items kind of somewhere that you can kind of find it in the middle of the night. And then, when it comes up, you're like, oh, let me look at see what my plan was. Oh, my plan was I'm going to practice that leaves on a stream meditation, or I'm going to do that raisin thing that we did, or I'm going to do another thing. Great. Do those things. So, and then the last one here is cognitive shuffling. And Michelle, we've talked about this on a few episodes before, but cognitive shuffling is kind of like a game of categories for your brain, or maybe Pictionary kind of like for your brain. But essentially, the thinking of it is it's a combination of thinking of a word and then an item associated with each letter, and it's the scattered variety of when you think about each letter and then the item, and then it shuffles, that kind of, we think that it kind of mimics some of that brain kind of scatteredness. But a great example of this is try, think of a word that's at least 5 letters. And I'm going to use what you have here in the book here, Michelle, breath. And so if we use the word breath, you're going to go through each one of these letters, and we'll start with the letter B. And I want you to think of as many things that you can think of that start with the letter B. So what can you think of, Michelle?
Boy,
Okay.
ball,
Yep.
bird,
Yep.
brain.
I love it. And so for each one of these things, when you are doing this kind of cognitive shuffling, and you can do it either as you're falling asleep or in the middle of the night if you're trying to get back to sleep. But again, the key part on all this is if you know that you're not falling back to sleep, we do want you to always get up and get out of bed. But when you're thinking between these things, like you mentioned, bird, I want you to visualize a picture of a bird. So it doesn't matter what kind of bird, just visualize the bird and then let it go, and then visualize the next one. So you said ball, wasn't that one of the other ones? Visualize that, then let it go. When you've thought of all of the things you can think of with the letter B, you move on to the next letter. So in the word breath, the next letters are, what objects or things or animals can you think of that start with the letter R?
Round.
Mm-hmm.
The color red.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the bird robin.
I thought of robin. I was wondering if you were going to say that. Yep. Each one of these things, just visualize it, and you go through all of these things until you're done. And if you get to the end of the word, you get to the end of breath, and you're done with that, pick a new word. Maybe your next one is, I'm going to pick this up. They didn't place this, but I'm going to say maybe you choose the word Applebee's, and then you go through the whole word.
Yeah.
So
I like this. I find that, a lot of people that have insomnia, you included listening to this, you're a much more than over intelligent. And
yeah.
so if you give yourself too many choices, you end up getting very frustrated because more time will pass. And it's a kind of a running joke in the office. If you come in with a rolling suitcase or an accordion file, I know exactly what you've done in your life, and it's something in engineering or mathematics. So, and I do have a lot of people that it's too open. I don't want a certain amount of time because we take your clock away, at night. I don't really want you to just tell me how intelligent you are and how many words that you can think of. So I would set a specific number. So you want to get 5 things, knowing that you can think of well more than 5 things, and knowing that that doesn't mean you have a neurodegenerative condition if you can't think of 5 things at that moment.
Yeah,
when
totally fine.
Easy things like this get difficult at night, it's a really good thing because your brain is actually falling asleep. But if you make it through that entire word and you've decided you're going to use five words for descriptors in between, and you're still awake, you get out of bed.
Yep. You're not close to sleeping if you're probably doing the cognitive shuffling more than once.
And if you feel kind of that sense of that physiologic hyperarousal, or you really, like you said, are not sleeping or not even sleepy at that point, there is a pattern, and it does correspond with our human physiology. It's going to be between 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning typically. And it's okay, but don't confirm by looking at the clock that it's 1 to 4.
Oh, yeah.
Have that other invitation that you can do in the middle of the night.
Go make your peppermint tea and sniff it, just like what's in the bag,
Yeah.
Do other things that are tired but not sleepy.
Yeah. You don't even have to make the tea. You can just do some visualization of you making the tea and drinking the tea, and then thinking about all the different senses with it.
Yeah.
But this is really helpful because I think it comes up a lot, and I think it will help this whole series that we've done about revisiting cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Now, before the podcast and how we met each other through the lecture series that I would actually do in the office, this again was the time of year where we are gearing up to set up these basics so that we can talk about very specific things that happen, and very specific, more like disease-oriented things. So keep practicing. And if it's something that's hard for you, or like something comes up that you say, you talk about all these things and I already do them, but this is hitting that chord. This is one of the most common areas that
Oh,
it
yeah.
hits this chord. And in the next episode or the episode after this, you're going to start hearing a little bit more of the psychological conditions that perpetuate
Mhm.
us being stuck in this situation.
Mhm.
So don't feel frustrated if you're listening to this and say, well, I know, like this happens to me all the time.
Mhm.
Don't be frustrated if you're kind of at that starting spot in this thing.
Absolutely.
We're all in it together. And
Yeah.
again, it comes and goes. So we're glad that you're in it with us.
Yeah. And you're
And
not alone with it.
you're not alone.
No, not at all.
And please follow us and keep listening to more episodes.
Absolutely. And again, another plug for our ultimate guide to anxiety. It's coming soon because we're going to take a deep dive into anxiety and what you can do about it, because it's such a huge co-occurring thing with
So if you
insomnia.
don't want to miss an episode, make
Yeah.
sure that you're subscribed and following our podcast.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Until next time, Sleep Nation.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.